Well, I think that this first painting that I wanted to discuss will help us put a lot of these issues or make them more concrete. And this is actually a first for the show, but I'm going to attempt to employ some editing skills that I don't really have and put images of the paintings on the screen. But for our audio only listeners, first you might want to pull it up, but can you describe the scene in Da Vinci's Virgin of the Rocks? Though, I mean, I of course encourage them to Google it quickly if they can.
Yes. I'm going to be super snobby and say that you have to call it Leonardo's painting, not Da Vinci. That's a modern construct. He didn't really have a surname. So, fun fact.
Interesting.
Yeah. If you want to wind up in Italian, you can talk about Da Vinci's paintings because you'll get a response. Let's put it that way. So here we have, it's a very, very complicated iconography. People still not quite sure what's going on. It's an imagined scene. It's kind of a apocryphal thing. It's not particularly explicitly described in the Bible. But here we have an imagined meeting between the Baptist and Christ. Obviously, the Baptist recognizes Christ's divinity. There's an angel. It's possibly, I don't know. One of the ideas is that it's an imagined idea of the meeting on the flight into Egypt, but it really is not. It's a kind of reverie about an imagined thing. It's meant to be a departure point, almost a meditative thing. It's one of the most long and tortuous stories in Leonardo's life, that this commission started from memory in 1483, and he didn't finish it. Well, he didn't finish it full stop, but he finally got paid in something like 1507, and there were two versions of the painting, ours, one in the Louvre. Very complicated, stopping, starting, working on other things, the change of government, going to Rome, going to Florence, coming back, going to court because he wasn't paid enough, going to court because it wasn't finished enough, etc., etc. It's a very, very complex picture, but it has and there's lots of discussion about how do you compare the two versions, the one in the Louvre and ours, which was first, which was later. There's so much going on in this painting, it's hard to even know where to start, but understanding something of that is very key to our work on the painting. And I guess what I would say about this as a conservator in a major museum like this is, of course, one of the drivers for cleaning paintings, that is removing old discolored varnishes and retouchings, is, they look better when you renew them and replace them. And now we do them with materials that are quite permanent, and we show them in conditions where they're not going to yellow and discolor anything like as rapidly, and all that stuff is going on. And in many cases, that's enough. But in this case, I think the cultural weight of working on anything by Leonardo was such that it's not done casually. And when he went to Milan, he had he quickly put together a rather big studio, and there are lots of artists working for him, working with him, working for him, of varying degrees of skill. And a lot of what he did was collaborative. And that's very normal for the Renaissance anyway, but it's really clear in Milan because suddenly he's doing the Last Supper, he's painting a fresco in the Palazzo, the Castello Sforzesca, he's making the big bronze horse, he's doing court entertainments, he's doing portraits, all this stuff's going on. So this painting falls in all that mix, and that's part of why it took so long to finish. And there's no doubt a degree of recycling of drawings and collaboration and delegation within the studio. And that's one of the things you try and unpick as part of understanding the picture as we clean it. And so in the National Gallery, we have 20 odd paintings from the Leonardo studio or from his collaborators in Milan. Some of them are magnificent paintings, some of them not so much. But we spent about 10 years cleaning, restoring, studying about 10 or 15 of these pictures before we even thought about cleaning Leonardo, to understand about how the layer structures worked, what kind of materials were used, how things might change, what changes, what doesn't change, what are the aesthetic issues in removing varnishes, what are you left with drying cracks, all those things form the background to doing that work. So I guess that's one thing to set the stage of how this came about. In terms of cleaning the picture, well, I think the exciting thing here was to try and understand what its qualities were, particularly against the other picture. In many ways, it's less highly finished than the one in Paris. It's more broadly painted, but it has a kind of ambition about an intellectual ambition that's very striking. This is where the collaboration, much of what we do is in a museum for sure, is in close collaboration with curatorial scholarship and scientific learning. But for example, when you know that about the time he's working on this picture is the same time in his notebooks he's trying to understand how vision works. He's one of the first people who really understood that when the light levels go down, you don't see color as strongly. You know, we know now about rods and cones in the eye, but before this thing, you know, a red drapery would be dark red in the shadows, and a blue drapery would be dark blue in the shadows. But if you look at our painting, you'll see that all the local colors, as they go darker, they lose color intensity, and they merge toward a kind of browny black, which is a really modern idea, and it's based on his research, and it's kind of baked into the painting technique he developed for how he built this picture up. So all that stuff's going on, which is one of the really striking things about the painting. Make it very, very exciting to understand that as a kind of eureka moment when you see, you know, what the ambitions were. I feel like I'm rambling a bit now. Does that make sense when you look at it? Because you see, it really is not very brightly colored work. And if you think about a Botticelli or something like that, even a generation before, you have much stronger local colors, you know, red, blue, yellow, balanced against one another. Here it's quite muted, and the whole thing is built over a kind of browny matrix with color added very judiciously.
No, that is so cool. I mean, when you said earlier, you said everything done by Leonardo, and I refer to him as Leonardo instead of Da Vinci. It's not done casually. I was wondering whether that meant you're making the assumption that when working with a master like this, every detail of the painting is purposeful, so everything can be analyzed and interpreted as having some intended significance.
I don't. That's kind of that rapidly goes to you know, tinfoil hat territory. No, what I meant to say was just the cultural weight of Leonardo is that as a modern museum with a Leonardo painting, you don't just look at it and think, oh, that looks a bit yellow, that would be nice to clean. No, you have to think about why you're doing it and really have your research together. Because I would say that in a major museum like ours and many others in the world, you know, a conservation treatment is an opportunity for a kind of reevaluation of the painting, and it becomes like the hub of all kinds of integrated research, whether it's provenance, how it got to the museum, how it was painted, what the painting materials are, all those things. So that's what I meant, is that it's not just one you pluck off the wall because it's looking a bit yellow and it'd be nice to do.
I see.
Yeah,
I see. But I mean, still, when you take into account the fact that he was a master and he was a scientist and all of these things were going on, you can look at the color scheme of the painting and not just shrug it off as a whim, but take it as, I mean, maybe living isn't the right word, but it's an intellectual document in a sense of the evolution.
We have a lot of things we bring when we look at old master paintings, that we have a kind of deep and rather idea of painters as, 19th century, capital or small r romantic creators, and a lot of them were not in that same way. They weren't up in the attic with their beret, burning furniture to stay warm while they expressed their souls. Even someone like Van Gogh, his box of yarns, where he'd pull out threads of yarn and think about color relationships and understand, in accord with modern color theory, and plan the palette of a painting that, we look at a Van Gogh and think, oh, it's so expressionistic. It's such a tormented soul. And he's sort of going for it. And he's actually not. I mean, he is all those things, but it's also this learning and consideration and things going on that inform what looks very spontaneous and isn't. And I think that's kind of the business of painting as well in the Renaissance. I mean, the thing about, you look at the Virgin of the Rocks and think it is amazing, and it is, of course. But how many people look at that and think, oh, yes, he used the same drawing and traced it, twice. That, basically made a copy of the drawing, and he modified it because he's Leonardo. They're not photocopies of one another, but he's recycling compositional ideas. There's a pragmatic part of it as well that you need to unpick as understanding, what's going on.
Why do you say that he modified it because he's Leonardo?
Well, because he is the kind of restless thinker, and he is, his whole career is about, that saying about don't let perfect be enemy of good. He never really learned that, and so his whole artistic career is a steady stream of annoyed clients, works abandoned, not quite finished. For political reasons, or because he went somewhere else, or because he got a better offer, or because he strung someone along. The St. Jerome in the Vatican, not finished. The Adoration of the Magi in the Uffizi, not finished. The Virgin of the Rocks in London, not quite finished. The Battle of Anghiari in Palazzo Pubblico, not finished, abandoned, covered over. The Bronze Horse, not finished, etc., etc. The Mona Lisa never delivered to his clients because he couldn't quite stop tinkering with it, with him when he died.